My name is Carolyn, and this is Natasha. And Natasha is actually going to kick off for us.
Yes, hello. Hi, everyone. Wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is such a pleasure to be here today to contribute to this conference. So we want to first off say thank you very much for the invitation. We are so excited to share our experience with strengthening local governance in the natural resource sector. So let me get started by introducing ourselves. First off, let me introduce my colleague Carolyn. There's a great photo of us here together. This is Carolyn Burns. She is the director at Resolve and the head of the Resource Exchange. She's also a social performance practitioner with a background in international development in the international development sector, mining industry, and has expertise in inclusive facilitation, working with people around the world. And I am Natasha Ketter, program manager at Resolve and manager of the Resource Exchange. I also have a background in international development, project management, strategic communications, and I've worked with INGOs, civil society organizations, universities on various multi-stakeholder initiatives. Both Carolyn and I have worked all over the world in our careers, but now we're both based in Toronto, Canada, where we're pretty much always busy wrangling our small children on a daily basis. So we have some calm. We have some calm now. It's
One
quiet now,
moment.
so we can
Yeah.
present a calm moment. Okay,
Thanks so
so
much, Natasha.
I'll pass
Thanks.
it on to you.
So Natasha and I are really excited to be here today. We love talking about this work that we're doing at Resolve, and an initiative that we've started called the Resource Exchange. And so going to talk a little bit about the context within which we are doing this work, and then Natasha is going to jump in and talk more about what the Resource Exchange is and what we're learning from some of the work we're doing with it. So. Resolve also just to answer Sarah's specific question, Resolve is a nonprofit that specializes in multi-stakeholder collaboration. So we do a lot of work in the nature conservation space, the health space, and also the natural resources space. So our team has tons of experience in different natural resource sectors. We specifically are working in the mining space, but you'll hear me sort of interchangeably reference natural resources and by that, we are talking about mining, both industrial and artisanal mining, but we're also talking about all the other ways that we are putting pressure on our land and resources, including for energy, agriculture, different infrastructure projects, and also nature projects, which a lot of the things that we're talking about here relate to as well. So when we think about all of those things that we need in the world, the food, fuel, materials, we know that they come from local communities. And one of the things that has really been prevalent in both of our work and in Natasha and I's work is just how different it is when communities are actually involved in decisions about how those resources are used, and how, when that happens, we're able to more responsibly produce, access, and value those different resources. We know that natural resource development is a catalyst for change. That might be, I don't know, maybe even too soft of a way to explain it. But what we see is that whenever there is natural resource development, there is a big change, and what we're often focused on doing is balancing that change and trying to manage that change. So that includes things like mitigating some of the negative impacts that can come from natural resource development, as well as sharing some of the benefits, but also engaging the various stakeholders and rights holders that might be impacted or benefiting from that kind of natural resource development. This is a picture of a fellow named Schulich. He is Tashao means chief in Guyana. And he is the Tashao of an indigenous village in southern Guyana in the Rupununi. And we took this picture when we were doing an interview with him, and he was literally talking about the ways that his community members were trying to balance out the potential opportunities around jobs and economic benefits with the very real impacts on the land, and then what would happen if there were some more mining activities and what kind of in-migration that might also bring into their region. So we like this picture because I think it really speaks to the intensity of those decisions and how important it is, and what it means to be leaders who are thinking about that. I'll also say one thing. You'll see lots of great photos in this presentation. We get to work with a woman by the name of Jody Vinvogel, who's based in Cape Town. She's a photojournalist, and is her expertise is working with people, community members who want to tell their story. If you're interested, you can look her up, and you get to see lots of beautiful pictures as part of this presentation. So one of the ways that we know we can better manage the changes that come with natural resource development is when there is strong, inclusive, indigenous, and local governance, I should say. And when we see that, there are just better outcomes for people and planet. That includes the community people and community members that are impacted by natural resource development, but it also creates better outcomes for businesses, for governments, for other stakeholders that are connected through a landscape. I also just want to take a moment to call out that when we say Indigenous and local governance, we're doing that specifically because in many parts of the world, to recognize Indigenous rights is really important, and those can be recognized through different mechanisms. But there are also local communities around the world who are also using different governance mechanisms, even if they aren't reflected in different sort of Indigenous frameworks as well. So what we've seen is that unfortunately, even though it can create such great outcomes, is that Indigenous and local governance systems are often disconnected from decisions about natural resource development. So what we see is that there's gaps in dialogue, capacity, and resourcing for communities. So those literally the conversations and the discussions that are happening at a community level are disconnected from the impact assessment, permitting, regulatory processes that are happening in different places. We see inconsistent and disjointed expectations and incentives from a range of stakeholders. We see this really as a systemic issue where different stakeholder groups are incentivized to achieve different outcomes, which are not congruent with reinforcing Indigenous and local governance systems. And then we also see a really limited opportunity for different rights holders and other stakeholders to connect to outside of even those big decision-making moments, to even understand each other and to spend time building relationships that allow for better alignment and collaboration. Uh, and we do know that strengthening local and Indigenous governance also requires a range of different stakeholders and rights holders to work together. If we think about our big system for natural resource development, both thinking about upstream and downstream, there are different groups of people who hold different responsibilities, who hold different power and different influence. And while everyone might have a different role, they do have a role in reinforcing good practices and reinforcing rights and local and Indigenous governance. So that includes governments both at a national and local level. It includes producers, and we're using the term producer very specifically. So these are the people who are because we want to acknowledge that it's not just about private companies that are running industrial mine sites or big industrial agricultural sites, but sometimes also the small scale producers or those that have different structures to them. Civil society plays a really important role, and so do local community members. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Natasha, and she's going to talk about the resource exchange and how we are working to strengthen local and Indigenous governance.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. So indeed, so we launched the Resource Exchange to bring people together to strengthen and support people working in local governance. So as you can see, the Resource Exchange is really filling a key gap in the sector. And the network is made up of a large but niche group of people across the value chain. So our mission is to really connect people to the tools, the knowledge, the resources, and relationships they need to drive this local decisions about natural resource development. And we're proud to say that since launching in 2022, our team has hosted over 50 activities online and in person across the globe in Canada, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Tanzania, Zambia, and Guyana, and next month in Cote d'Ivoire as well. And it's so exciting that our network now we've had over 200 plus practitioners participate or contribute to the resource exchange since 2022. And members are based across 14 countries in North and South America and then across Africa. And we're continuing to grow. Next slide, Carolyn. So over the past 4 years, the resource exchange participants had identified 7 different themes that underpin strong local governance. And so you see here, we have active, inclusive, traditional governance systems. So inclusive local indigenous governance that shapes decision making. It's very important. Community visioning and planning. It's where communities have a shared vision to help guide their short and long-term priorities. Landscape approach and cumulative impacts, looking at combined impacts across the region and sectors. Information for decision making, how important it is to have trusted, accessible information that supports stronger decisions. Multi-stakeholder engagement and partnerships, which is important, collaboration across groups to improve alignment and outcomes in the sector. Benefit sharing, fair and transparent benefit sharing support communities. And leadership capacity, how important it is to have strong leadership that helps navigate complexity, conflict, and change. So what we've seen is that these 7 elements are applicable. Well, what's really important is that they're applicable across different regions and experiences, but to be effective, have to be context specific. And what we mean by that is context specific to the country, regions, or projects. And this framework really does guide our resource exchange activities. So what we've learned so much, I would say, and seen so many benefits since launching this network. And as you see, like we realize that relationships do matter as much as frameworks. It's so important. Governance is deeply contextual. We know that communities need that time, resources, and that sort of space and that opportunity to build capacity in the sector. And so we've seen so many wonderful benefits. We have the whole list here, but one key takeaway is that this work cannot be done off the side of our desk. This is really important work. We need investment. We need to have people committed to this work, and we're glad that we're able to provide that space. And so yeah, so these are key things as to why building such a global network with a focus on strengthening local governance has been so key and so important. So I will wrap it up. So if you want to learn more about the resource exchange and what we do, or feel free to reach out to us. Here's a fun QR code here. We're currently accepting new members to join the next cohort in June. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. So thank you very, very much for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Natasha and Carolyn. That was absolutely fantastic. Round of applause, everybody, for Natasha and Carolyn. Brilliant. Now we're going to leave your QR code up there on that screen for a second or two, just so that people can make sure they absolutely have it in their minds or perhaps in their phones, etc. A couple of quick questions. So in terms of traditional governance, do you think that everybody who should know about traditional governance, even the existence of it, actually know about it? And I ask because the number of projects I've worked with, people go, I've got my permit. And you're like, great, that's just one form of governance. What do you think?
Yeah, so in a lot of the people that are participating in the resource exchange are navigating the sort of, I'll call them more old school centralized decision making, governance systems that include a permit, but then also there's a real shift to decentralization through more municipal or regional structures as well. And then there's also often a traditional or customary governance process that is there. And so I think to be direct in your question, it would absolutely, if you're working in any space, you should understand both the technical aspects of that traditional governance system, like how is that reflected in the Constitution? How is that reflected in permitting and rights, both subsurface and land rights? But then also just what is the sort of quote unquote health of that governance system? How inclusive is it? What are the mechanisms that are developed there? How representative of the community is that traditional governance mechanism or system being? And a lot of the people that we're working with are civil society organizations or chiefs and sub chiefs themselves who are looking to I'll use the word like adapt those mechanisms to be more inclusive. So figuring out how to create subcommittees or councils so that women can have a more direct dialogue or sort of entry point, because women aren't often included at a sub chief or chief level.
Mm.
We're also seeing just some examples of where more organizing of women through different civil society organizations are then leading to more appointments or elections at a council or chiefdom level. So to answer your question again, definitely knowing about the governance is important, but then also trying to understand the health of it, and how reflective it truly is of the community is really important as well.
Awesome. So I think hold on to that thought because
Mhm.
if you can stick around, we're going to have a panel session in 20
Great,
minutes time. And
great.
because I'd love to bring Nigel into this discussion as well. But because you mentioned women, that is an amazing segue to the
Oh,
next
good.
speaker.
Fantastic.
Not just because we seem to be overloaded with women in this conference, which is that
That's
a problem? I don't think so. And it just goes to show that you can certainly have gender parity in terms of conferences that are talking about raw materials. That is not a problem at all, everybody, because we've been
Agreed.
here, done it for many years now as well. So before we go into our next speaker, I'd just like to invite everybody to say a massive thank you to Natasha and Carolyn and everything that you're doing because it is seriously exciting. And thank you very much. Round of
Thank
applause.
you.
Brilliant.